Anne usually springs to mind first when thinking of the Boleyn sisters, largely because of her role as Henry VIII's second wife and her dramatic downfall. Yet Mary Boleyn, her older sister, also played a significant part in the Tudor court, and in many ways she paved the way for Anne's rise and subsequent fall. The debate about which sister was more scandalous is intriguing because both left indelible marks on history for different reasons. First, the matter of birth order, which is still debated. Some historians argue that Anne was born first around 1507, giving her prestigious placement in the household of Margaret of Austria, which would typically go to the eldest daughter. Others suggest Mary was the older sister, born around 1508, and was married off first, usually a privilege for the elder sibling. But even before her marriage, Mary had already gained a reputation for scandal. Rumours swirled that she had been the mistress of Francis I of France, who allegedly referred to her as the English mare, hinting at her loose reputation at the French court. This notoriety may have pressured her father, Thomas Boleyn, to arrange a swift marriage for Mary to limit further damage to the family's standing. However, Mary's affair with Henry VIII likely compounded the family's discomfort, tarnishing the Boleyn name before Anne's dramatic rise. In contrast, Anne was more calculating in pursuing Henry, holding out for marriage rather than becoming just another mistress. Yet despite her efforts to elevate her family's name, her eventual downfall, being executed for treason and adultery, left an even darker stain. On February 4, 1520, Mary Boleyn married William Carey, a Henry VIII court gentleman. It's widely speculated that Henry himself attended the wedding, which might have been when his affair with Mary began. While details are murky, it's generally accepted that the affair occurred during her marriage to Carey. This timing casts a shadow over the paternity of her two children. Mary gave birth to a daughter, Catherine, in 1524, and a son, Henry, in 1526. But it's the son in particular who is often believed to have been fathered by the king, given his resemblance to Henry VIII and the favour shown to him by his cousin, Queen Elizabeth I, who later granted him the title of Lord Hunsdon. Mary's marriage to Carey acted as a convenient cover for the affair, allowing her children to be presumed legitimate in the eyes of society. As a married woman, any offspring would automatically be attributed to her husband, and this shielded Mary from direct scandal, though rumours about her son's true parentage persisted. Henry VIII himself confirmed the affair when questioned later about any relationships with other Boleyn family members, famously replying, "Never with the mother." In history, Mary is remembered as Henry's mistress more than anything else. One historian noted that she is known as the sister of King Henry VIII's second wife, the infamous Anne Boleyn, but she was also the king's mistress before her sister's ascendancy. At court, Mary's affair likely fueled gossip, especially as the Boleyns were still seen as relatively low-born upstarts, their rise stirring resentment among established nobility. It would have been easy to accuse Mary of leveraging the affair to benefit her family, a common enough practice in royal courts, where mistresses often receive rewards and positions of influence. However, the fact that Mary was married during the affair offered her some protection. Society was more inclined to blame women for illicit liaisons, but being married to Carey meant people would assume her children were his. Despite this, Mary wasn't entirely spared the stain of scandal, a fact made painfully clear by her enduring nickname, the Great and Infamous Whore. Whether Mary actively sought the affair or was pushed into it by her ambitious family remains unclear, but there is an argument to be made that she was manipulated into the relationship with Henry for the Boleyn's advantage. After Carey died in 1528, Mary was in financial straits, suggesting that her relationship with the king had ended. Henry's attention had shifted to Anne by this time, and Mary was largely forgotten. Though she attended Henry's visit to France and may have been present at Anne's coronation in 1533, her previous liaison with the king likely faded from memory as he focused on his new queen. Henry's marriage to Anne was technically unlawful due to his prior relationship with Mary, which may explain why he never acknowledged any of her children as his own. Thus, Mary's fall from royal favour was complete, and her fate was quietly tied to her sister's rise. Mary is believed to have died in poverty in July 1543, but her legacy continued to her two surviving children. Her daughter Catherine served as a maid of honour to Anne of Cleves in 1539, while her son Henry became a member of the royal household. Queen Elizabeth I, Mary's niece, favoured her Carey cousins, especially Henry, who was rumoured to be Henry VIII's son. The grant of manors and estates to the Careys during the affair with Mary suggests that Henry might have tacitly acknowledged the boy's royal blood. Though Mary's scandalous reputation could have harmed her children, they still gained favour, particularly with Elizabeth, perhaps out of familial loyalty or a shared recognition of their inherited tangled legacy. Unlike her sister Mary, Anne Boleyn's life is well documented, largely because she became Henry VIII's second wife and pivotal in England's break from the Catholic Church. The most significant contrast between the sisters lies in Anne's refusal to become the king's mistress. While Mary had an affair with Henry, Anne held out, determined to secure her place as queen, not just as a fleeting court favourite. Having spent her early years at prestigious European courts, first with Margaret of Austria and then at the French royal court, Anne learned the refined skills expected of a Tudor woman, including music, dance and fashion. She even brought back French styles that made her stand out when she returned to England. Yet despite her poise, Anne wasn't immune to scandal. Anne's flirtatious nature had raised eyebrows at the French court, and she was known to attract attention, which followed her back to England. After her return to the English court in 1522, her relationship with Henry VIII deepened around 1527. Although the king offered her the position of official royal mistress, Anne declined, likely driven by her desire to avoid Mary's fate. Anne's refusal suggests she did not want to be remembered as a mistress, much less one associated with scandal. However, the scandal followed Anne regardless. During Henry's long and contentious effort to divorce Catherine of Aragon, known as the King's Great Matter, Anne became deeply unpopular. Many at court and across the country supported Catherine, and Anne was viewed as the cause of the king's desire to cast his wife aside. She was called a whore despite not having slept with Henry yet, and some even accused her of witchcraft, an accusation often tied to women who sought power. Though she hadn't yet crossed the boundary into an affair, Anne was vilified for pursuing a married man, behaviour that would be scandalous even by today's standards. Eventually in 1533, Anne slept with Henry, became pregnant, and their secret marriage was hastily arranged. This turn of events contradicts Anne's earlier resolve to avoid her sister's fate, as she ended up in a position similar to Mary's. The secrecy of the marriage also tainted its legitimacy, much like Edward IV's secret marriage to Elizabeth Woodville had cast doubt on their children's rights to the throne. The secret nature of Anne and Henry's marriage later stained their daughter, Elizabeth I, with the label of illegitimacy, a mark that would follow her throughout her reign. Despite Anne's efforts to avoid scandal, she inadvertently passed it down to her daughter, just as her relationship with Henry had tainted her. Ultimately, Anne's desire to rise above the scandal that engulfed her sister led her to become ensnared in a scandal of her own, one that would end with her execution and her daughter's lifelong struggle against questions of legitimacy. When Catherine of Aragon's marriage to Henry VIII was annulled, Anne Boleyn was crowned Queen of England in a lavish ceremony at Westminster Abbey. However, the birth of a daughter, Elizabeth, on September 7, 1533, marked the beginning of Anne's downfall. Both she and Henry had staked everything on producing a male heir, and the arrival of a daughter deeply frustrated the king. After breaking from Rome to marry Anne, Henry's disappointment in her failure to give him a son eroded her influence at court. Anne's failure to produce that son sealed her fate. By 1536, Thomas Cromwell orchestrated her removal by drawing up charges of adultery and treason, crimes that carried the death penalty. The accusations against Anne were shocking. Not only was she accused of multiple adulteries, but also incest with her brother, George Boleyn. This incest charge was the most scandalous of all, and it ensured Anne's reputation was destroyed. Few considered her innocence, perhaps because of her ruthless decision to become queen. On May 2nd, she was imprisoned in the Tower of London, where she would never see her daughter again. Her marriage to Henry was annulled on May 18th, 1536, and she was executed the next day. Anne's downfall was swift and brutal. She was labelled a whore and a witch, just as she had been before she even became queen. Despite protesting her innocence to the end, her family, already tarnished by a scandal, did not publicly support her. Her sister Mary did not attend her execution, possibly due to their strained relationship, or perhaps to avoid further entanglement in the family's disgrace. Both sisters defied social norms, Mary as a mistress and Anne as a queen who refused to be an obedient wife. While Mary is often remembered as the more scandalous of the two, Anne's ambitious pursuit of power and tragic end have cemented her as equally scandalous in history. Despite their different paths, both sisters played crucial roles in elevating their families, even as their fates ended in disgrace. If you enjoyed this latest video, give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. Click on the screen now to explore the untold stories and hidden secrets of another fascinating figure with a story to tell. Get ready to uncover more historical gems and intriguing royal tales. Your next adventure in history starts right here.